Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's final version, our final session for the COVID Economy Leadership Forum. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been trying to help you make more sense out of what's going on in the future, and that covers a number of topics that we've covered. Today's final topic is all about the selling, all about the getting business, all about the helping the economy, all about the helping your organizations and yourself by increasing your customers and increasing your revenue. Or for some of you, it may have something to do with not increasing your customers, but to keep us from really feeling the effects of what's been happening around the country lately and around the world. And we know that that's been very difficult for a lot of us, and there's been a lot of change involved in that. So today, we are so happy to bring a panel of experts. And one of my philosophies is to surround yourself with people who are better than you. And I couldn't have done a better job of that than bringing the people in today that I brought in today. With me today, we have Dione Mischler, who's joining us from Orange County, California. She's an inside sales advisor and a coach at Inside Sales by Design. She spent 20 plus years in multiple industries, a lot of it in business development. And she's also the CEO of Sales Class AI, a new product that she's just brought out in order to help sales teams by giving them inexpensive, cost-effective training on the low end. Did I get that right? All right, I like that. Okay, she is also the chapter president of the AAISP. And for those of you who don't know the AAISP, that's the American Association of Inside Sales Professionals, and she's also the founding member of the Sales Enablement Society. Dione, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. We also have with us Kathleen Himler from Dale Carnegie right here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. At Dale Carnegie, she serves multiple roles, that of area manager and as a certified trainer. Basically, she does a combination of business development and training. And that's a real tough thing to balance, because let me tell you, I've talked to some of my friends at some of the prestigious universities, and they've said things to me like, hey, you know, it's harder to become a trainer at Dale Carnegie than it is to be here at this prestigious university. So she really deserves kudos for that. But she works with clients of various sizes in various industries, and her certificate, or certification, I guess I should call it, in training, corresponds with sales, with presentations, and of course with Dale Carnegie's classic interpersonal success skills. So Kathleen, thanks for being with us today. She, by the way, was previously with AT&T and with NCR. Now, she's just sent me a text. Would you please, Shannon, text with Kathleen, because she's having a little bit of problem with her connection on her side. You can just coach her on how to get rid of that YouTube video. Speak of the devil. So Shannon, while she's handling those things behind the scenes, Shannon Gregg is my partner at MMasters Corporation, and more importantly, she's the founder and president of Cloud Adoption Solutions. And Cloud Adoption Solutions has dedicated itself to helping organizations with their technology stacks and processes, especially as it comes to CRM and Salesforce.com. She works with me as a consultant and a trainer with MMasters Corporation, and she's also a stakeholder in Confirm, which is one of the sponsors here today. And she's held sales operations and leadership positions at such companies as Teletracking, ERT, and Accurian. By the way, she's got a certification from the Drucker School of Business at Claremont, which I think it's really cool. And she is, as we speak, defending her PhD dissertation, which is concentrating on building and communities. And it's always a pleasure to have Shannon with us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Shannon, were we lucky enough to have you take care of that situation with Kathleen at this point?
She is dialing back in.
Okay, that sounds good. What we found today, by the way, is that we've done a number of these. Here she is now. Kathleen, good to have you with us again. We've done a number of these sessions over the past couple of weeks, and we keep finding new things that are happening because people keep changing things in their software. Zoom is where we do most of them, and we keep finding these little idiosyncrasies. So occasionally we may run into that, even though I've got a couple of the experts in the area on that today. And YouTube has been playing our past webinars on us. It's happened at least 3 times that I've heard today. So I apologize to you, Kathleen, for confusing you on that. But welcome back, and I'm glad you're with us.
It's great to be back.
And for those of you who don't know me, I'm David Radin. And for the last several decades, I've had one foot in technology and one foot in media, building a number of companies along the way and doing some help for product launches for little organizations you may have heard of, for instance, Verizon and Apple and Motorola in a consultant role. Anyway, most recently, I've organized a team in order to build this product called Confirmed. Okay, we got a number of things that we're going to be doing here today in this session. We're going to start with 7 items to consider immediately as you think about what you are going to be doing related to how you handle your processes and activities in what we're calling the COVID economy. We've heard people call it a number of different things, the new normal. Frankly, there are people who are saying maybe normal's not really normal. So maybe we need another new name for it. But we've got a handful of items that I'll take you through that we think you ought to consider immediately. We'll talk a little bit about your prospecting cadence, because in a group like this today, we know we've got a lot of sales leaders here. We know we've got a lot of people who are in sales on various levels. And we want to make sure that you're in a position that you can take advantage of the key items that you need to take care of as you're doing this. And then finally, we're going to talk about our panel of authorities. So again, those are the 3 things we're going to talk about today, and that is our panel of authorities. I've already given you the introductions. We've got Dione Mischler, Shannon Gregg, and Kathleen Himler, who will all contribute, and later we'll have a real panel discussion. Let's first, though, take care of those items to consider immediately, because they're things that really have been attacking us over the last couple months that we all need to have on our table. Number 1, we need to do research in advance, but not the typical type of research that we usually do. We need to do it a little bit differently than usual, because in this environment, companies are changing at a much more rapid pace than they were before. This means your company, of course, but it also means the companies that you're dealing with. So you need to be recognizing that, and therefore the research needs to be about, well, who's making it, who's downsizing and who's not downsizing, how's that going to affect us, and where should we go? You need to be talking to the coaches, which is a sales term in your organization, about where things may be going in their organizations. Are they thinking about reorgs? Are there reorgs that have been happening? Because those things are going to make changes to the way that you're going to approach each of your clients. And then finally, we think that you ought to look in LinkedIn a little bit differently than usual, because LinkedIn gives you a real interesting perspective, because it's the individual's perspective of what's going on in their world. You will be seeing a number of people who will suddenly have new jobs, or will suddenly say, I'm out there by myself. I can almost guarantee that if you see people who are saying, I'm in my own business now, that they probably got downsized. And that means a couple things for you. It means that you're going to be in a position to look at their organization and say, hey, is this person not there anymore? How do I deal with them? And you're also going to need to look at that as a potential opportunity for you to work with those people. Perhaps you have a need, or perhaps you can satisfy their needs in wherever they go, or just as importantly, help them get their next job. All of that stuff is great for them. It's great for you. And I know that Kathleen, for instance, is in the Dale Carnegie environment. Everything's about the client, right, Kathleen?
Indeed. So, and when we can connect with them and lend any kind of assistance.
Okay, and we'll talk about that in a little while as well. We'll get into that much more deeply. So that brings up another thing, make it easy for them to reach you. It's not just a question of doing good for them, but it's a question of doing good for you, because if it's easy for them to reach you, then your job of getting the new prospects is much better. We suggest you do things like contact forms, and that you make them able to book their meetings with you on the web. At Confirmed, we recognized what the issues were with current methodologies to book meetings on the web, and we are actually coming out with a new version of doing it, which we believe will revolutionize the way you do that as well. So we think you ought to make sure that you allow virtual or face-to-face meetings. Think about what's going on right now. And this is going to change if you're listening to this on YouTube or on one of our streaming mechanisms versus live today. As we talk about this today, Texas is starting to see more cases of coronavirus. Florida is starting to see more cases. Pennsylvania, a little bit more, but a bit stable. New York seems to have come down from its peak. A lot of organizations and a lot of, frankly, a lot of states have said, let's go out and start to socially interact again. But in other cases, it's going to get worse. So we don't know what the other people are going to want. So we need to be able to offer them the ability to both show face-to-face types of meetings, as we show here on the left. By the way, these are typical confirmed screens. Or we need to show them virtual meetings and make it as easy as possible for them. Today we're using Zoom, and we know Zoom is used by a lot of people, but other people may prefer Microsoft meetings or may prefer some Skype or Google Meet. So you got to be careful that they're able to actually meet with you. So offering multiples is a good thing. We try to empower that a little bit better for you with Confirm, but the key is still the same. Allow them to meet on their terms, and you'll have a better chance of getting them to meet with you. Reevaluate your target industries. As you do, you're going to see that some of them may not be quite as good a target as you thought they were just a few months ago. Some of them will be better. So figure out who, in terms of industries, are going to prosper and who won't. Who are going to be really reeling and who are going to represent new opportunities. Look at the news related to recent trajectories, not just your local news or what you're used to reading, but look at those other publications and websites that you're not used to reading that might give you a sense of what's happening. And by the way, that includes studies and projections. And then take a long, hard look at your product fit. What needs to be changed based upon what's happening in my target industries? Unfortunately or fortunately, many of you, you're going to need to redo your projections. What you planned out at the beginning of 2020 simply will not handle 2021. It could be because your industry or your target industries have sunk through the floor, or it could be because something has come up that makes you more valuable. Think about Zoom, Microsoft Meetings. They've been going up by hundreds of thousands or millions of users on a consistent basis. That's because the game has changed for them. On the other hand, airlines and restaurants, they are taking it on the chin a bit. So go back, look at your projections, make sure they're still valid, figure out how you can justify what you have. And if you don't justify those projections, you should probably look at redoing them. And that also means making the real adjustments to your cost structure. And unfortunately, that might mean adjusting your team. It's not the place we really want to do it, but it's a place that happens. And I hope we can talk with Dione about that and how that's effective a little bit later. But think about your salespeople. You might be getting rid of some marketing people because marketing people tend to be early to go out the door. So your salespeople may need to pick up some of the slack from what they do. You may need to territory align. That is, some of the territories for some of your salespeople might be going really gangbusters, and others might have just fallen through the floor for no reason that the salesperson could have dealt with. So you may need to do some territory alignment. And then I suspect some of you are going to be doing more inside sales, less travel, and you're going to need to also focus on change, not just the change around you, but the change around your market, the people who are there, and how they have to deal with that. You should also reevaluate your prospecting cadence. We'll take a couple minutes on this in just a few minutes, but you should have a continued emphasis on combining your best practices with consistent behavior and information. One of the things that we found in the past is that most companies, not many companies, but most companies don't do all three. They either don't incorporate information, or they don't use best practices, or their best practices sometimes happen and sometimes don't happen. As you incorporate those together, you make it easier for your team to go out and do it, and you make it easier for your team to do the right thing so that your clients can value from your prospect as well. So let's take a couple minutes now and look at how you might combine the best practices with data. I'm going to warn you now that we're using the processes that we've put together for Confirmed. You can do this with or without Confirmed. You can do this in many ways, but this is what we believe is optimal based on what's looking at us right now. So just to make sure everyone's on the same page, a cadence is a repetitive process that you use, much like the cadence of a bicycle is the wheel going round or the pedals going round. But it's something that you do over and over again. And when you're in a prospecting cadence, going out and looking for new clients, you want to be able to do the things often that have the same impact over and over again that are high impact operations. And many people will put this in, put 2 or 3 steps together to make that happen, and then go off script or go off cadence. We suggest that you have a cadence that might be worth, let's say, a month. And in this particular case, you see how we have suggested a basics for a cadence, and that is that you have an action. It happens on a specific date, and then you have a series of sub-actions or actions that happen afterwards based on whether you were successful or whether you were failing in doing that last thing. And by failing, we mean you either didn't reach the person or that person didn't respond in the way that would get you to the next step. Otherwise, it's a success. So here's just a little sense of how it might work. So a couple things that you need to make sure you can do is follow up on the meetings accurately. Make sure you know which meetings are pending. Make sure you know who's actually in the funnel properly. That's using a CRM system. That's using other tools perhaps. It's making sure that you know when you last talked to them, when you asked them for the meeting, and what the responses were. Make sure that you understand how they're interacting. We're using data here on the top right in order to be able to show you that this particular person got a reminder on the 15th of January. It was the first reminder of perhaps many that they got, and that they opened that reminder about 7 hours later. So that gives us some sense of how they interact with your messaging, and it gives you a sense of how you might be able to get to them better if you're unable to get to them. Then on the bottom right, you see a list of the people that we've sent offers to, and we have some sense about whether they've opened them or not. We have some sense about whether they're pending or whether they're confirmed, and other types of statuses. What is that? Anyway. And we also have a couple clicks that we can take in order to be able to make sure that the salesperson can handle the next step very easily and doesn't get dissuaded. Don't forget to review your metrics. In this case, I'm showing you 2 pieces of metrics. The top one comes from salesforce.com, where we log the events that we do. And the bottom one is a report from Confirmed, which says what has happened over the last 7-day period with a specific salesperson, so that we can understand how many times he's asked for an offer, how many times they've been confirmed, and what the follow-up has looked like. So we can take these and other metrics and other information and other insights and other analytics and be able to combine them with the practices that are good and that are consistent. And hopefully, the result will be a cadence that you can use on any given client that would allow you to get to them with the highest probability, would allow you to keep your sales team from doing excess work, and give them insights that they can use the tactics and strategies that will be most effective for them. If anybody wants to learn a little bit more about sales cadence, we're going to have a webinar on that in a couple weeks, and we're also going to have another one on Confirmed in a couple weeks if anyone's interested. But in the meantime, one more thing that we want to take a look at, and that is, what's the new normal look like? Are you going to be back in the office? And how does that affect you? Will your team be working from home? Will you be doing sales meetings? How do you keep your team motivated when maybe not everybody's together like they used to be? And how many of your road trips or your client visits are actually going to happen? Is it going to be none? Is it going to be smaller than before? Is it going to be just what you did before because you need to? I don't envision a case where there might be more, but perhaps one of our experts will be able to tell us that. So, tell you what, let's do. Let's open the mics up for our 4 experts and let them share their wisdom on some of these items here and on others that they think might be appropriate. So if I could, let me start with Kathleen. Kathleen, I know that you deal with a lot of change management in what you do. talk to us a little bit about the types of changes that people are going through personally that will have an impact on our sales teams.
Thanks, David, and hello, everyone. Boy, what a loaded question, and such an important one, because the nature of our jobs as professional salespeople, professional people helping people solve problems, is that we understand them. And to understand them, we have to connect with them. So we've got a lot of different forces at play right now because we're not able to have access to them, certainly not in the same way that we probably did before, and certainly not in the frequency. So it is even more important that we relish the opportunity we have when we do get to connect with them, either digitally or virtual meetings in this kind of a forum, so that we can be of assistance to them. Now, it makes me think, we are such creatures of habit. And it is not habitual right now what we're going through. Thus, the resistance to change and the process that we're all going through, both individually and professionally, to cope, to manage, and to navigate. The brain is kind of designed to look for patterns, right? It's designed to look for and plan for expectations. So when we encounter situations that we're not accustomed to, that we experience what we're not expecting, tension rises and resistance surfaces. And that's what we're all coping with right now, not only personally, but then in our advocacy role or assistance role professionally. So keep in mind that first we have to be people. We have to recognize that resistance in this change process is difficult for everyone, and that when we start experiencing and creating new patterns of interaction, such as with virtual meetings, that it starts to become more comfortable and we can be more productive. So just that perspective, at least to get us started here.
Kathleen, have you encountered any particular person who has said to you at this point, and Dione and Shannon, you're welcome to jump in as well, but have you encountered anybody who has just expressed to you that they're having trouble dealing with the change? Or is that something you have to read into it?
You know what? Who have you talked to that hasn't expressed that? Everyone is expressing heightened levels of stress because we don't know what's coming. We don't know if this wave's coming back. We know that our business is directly impacted right now. Our mode of operation is completely different. We've had to shift gears. We've had to take on new roles, new responsibilities, and yet production, for most of us, isn't what we're accustomed to. So stress is at a heightened level for everyone. And those of us who have resiliency and work on resiliency strategies with ourselves and our teams and our colleagues and our customers are those that are able to navigate more effectively.
Sure. Now, Dione, are you encountering something different? Are you encountering more of that? How are you seeing it in your marketplace?
Yeah, I would agree with Kathleen, and I think, for everyone right now, I think it's a really, really good time to develop some new skill set and muscles, right? So really connecting. When all this was going down, I was going, why am I so angry, right? I'm an intense person, but not angry. And so for some of you, just like I agree, we're humans, we're creatures of habit. We don't understand. We have a very predictable path here, right? Work is predictable, school is predictable, our calendars, how they work, and all of that got thrown out the door. And I think it's one of those things, Kathleen, I would agree with you, where you almost have to peel back the onion and go, hey, how am I feeling? And as an individual, if you're a leader, you got to go, hey, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? I know for me, I was like, why am I feeling so just agitated? And I was like, I feel like a kid stuck between two arguing parents. That's why, right? Like, come on. So I think with what's going on now, there's a difference between agility and ambiguity. And right now, there is too much ambiguity and FUD, right? Which is this whole until further notice never plays well. That means never, right? So to Kathleen's point, and I think what we're seeing is for leaders within an organization, or if you're a parent or you're part of a team, it's providing leadership in this time of uncertainty. And what does that mean? And, for somebody who's a self-admitted recovering control freak and perfectionist, right? Raise your hand silently.
She says she's control. You say you're recovering, right?
Right. It's what can we control? And so, what are we good at? What can we control? What can we, what do we do? How do we do it? And I think to what Kathleen was saying is a huge extra helping of grace right now across the board. It doesn't mean we don't hold ourselves accountable and to a higher standard, right? It doesn't give us a free pass. So there's still things that have to happen. There are still things as a group, as a team, as a leader in business that need to happen, right? So because at some point this too shall pass. So definitely seeing all of that. And then, wherever you are, you're just kind of unpacking some of that and being able to harmonize the emotional side with the rational side to hopefully come up with some wisdom.
So Diane, to that point that Dione, to the point that you just mentioned a few minutes ago, it's all about a pattern, right? So leaders are in place in many cases, and we were just talking about a few minutes ago, or I was just talking about it in the presentation, about consistency and patterns. How does this affect the leader who specifically is in place to create patterns but can't create them? What are there any different things for him or her?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, one of the really important things as a leader in times of uncertainty and chaos is having a plan for now, because it brings relief to our teams. For now, we're working from home. For now, our pattern is this. For now, this is what we're doing, right? So our frantic, chaotic state is temporary. It's not a permanent condition. And that's where, as a leader, in whether by title, deed, but in this case, we're talking about folks that have the title, make sure you've got your own advisory team, make sure you've got a good communication rhythm, right? People are looking right now for leaders to step up, provide the air cover, give us some guidance, right? So if you're that leader, then it's definitely about talking about, hey guys, for now we're doing this. Our whole goal is to keep everybody safe, productive. You need money, right? Let's not be unclear on that point. So that we have an economy, this is how it works. It's going to shift. However, this is what we're doing to keep it moving, right? So we have to be able to speak into the concrete steps we're taking, and we need to speak into the, hey, we know this is a goat rodeo right now for everybody. Here's how we're minimizing the goats, right? So that's how we want to be able to move that forward from a leadership capacity. And again, it's not a free pass, right? And so we've seen productivity levels go through the roof, right? So folks are getting a lot of the stuff done. The gig economy has taken off. And I've said that for years for folks, right? The economy we have, the 40 hours a week, how old is that, right? Do I really need that? Do we really need that? Or can I have folks, one of the VPs I had talked to before, he goes, I need to hire folks, and I'm going to hire this is not intended in any way other than spectacular, is all the women who became stay-at-home moms who are highly educated to come back, because I need them to work like 8 to 2 and get a bunch of stuff done, right? And so I think the lessons learned here is our world is reshaping as far as, do we really need 40 hours a week? Do I need this? Do I need that? And then, benefits are going to have to be dragged along into that, right? So it's a great opportunity to redesign your company with your people to get the most out of a system with people. So it's a great opportunity.
And I love the fact that you say that it's a great chance to redesign the company with people, perhaps also with technology and other as well. Shannon, if I can ask you at this point, you have been watching these technology projects go on for many years at this point, and sometimes they go farther and faster and sometimes they don't. Now you've got smaller budgets and greater need. How's that affecting the way people are looking at their technology stack and how they're implementing this to deal with the current and future?
It is. And I think one of the things that has excited me so much about this new opportunity that we have with the pandemic and the way that workplaces are reorganizing, our definition of workplace has changed, is that people are now willing to give a very serious look to bringing the past 20 years of technology into the past, 20 weeks, right? So it's been a forcing mechanism that I think is very welcome to say, okay, we're salespeople, right? We're sellers. We get having a target on our back. We get the 90-day years. We get to being managed by metrics. That all makes sense. But now's the time that we can say, all right, how can we manage our productivity? Just like Dione was saying, how can we take these levels of productivity and make them even more productive by putting in automation where we keep doing the same thing over and over again? How can we look at it and say, now's the perfect time for us to look at our tech stack to say, where do we have something that, sort of is a one size fits all that does 80% of what we need, rather than like 12 different point solutions that we have to remember all the logins for, right? So I think a lot of people are, just like Dione said, like, what's for now? What do we do right now for now? And then how can we re-envision what we do after that, taking into consideration that beautiful golden triangle of the people, process, and technology, and making sure it's all good. While David's giving me a little bit, that's okay, because now I'm going to say, like, now's a great time for the sales leaders to not only evaluate your sales motion. So David talked a little bit before about cadence, that's a sales motion, and looking to say, like, do we have the right people in the right roles? Are the leaders the ones who are truly saying, I can inspire you not only by your metrics to say how many opportunities you're going to close this quarter, but also by saying, let me consider your mental health. Let me look at seeing, like Kathleen said, like, where do we need to bring in change management? How can we look at our sellers as humans and inspire them to sell in a new way?
Yeah, and we're seeing a ton of that. So, Kathleen, I have a question for you too, and it's my outside sellers are now inside sellers, right? And I've got folks that have been doing this for 40 years that, no, they're not going to change because they don't want to. And they're just waiting for everything to kind of come back online, right? And I think that's fair. I think we all are, right? I think we're all waiting for that. And I know, like, when I go in and I work with folks, and it's, we're pretty pragmatic on playbook creation and process creation and rolling it out and some training and teach backs and all that good stuff. And so, but Shannon and Kathleen, I'd be super curious, right? So I'm so tempted sometimes to change my LinkedIn title to therapist, not certified, no schooling, 25 years of experience, right? So I think, I do it too, right? Like, I am messy up here and I need to unload. So are you seeing that too?
Let me ask you, Dione, did you say that your outside people are now inside? That was the challenge. And that's like the challenge of like the vast industry, right? As professional salesmanship. Here's something that I think is reasonable to maybe consider. If you're looking to help people make that kind of transition now and be really effective at it, just give them a little bit of a role in terms of taking a little piece at a time. When we have virtual meetings now, it is such a ripe opportunity to connect with people differently now, right? Because now we're hearing the background, the family members, we're seeing the pets, and it just and people are less guarded, I find. When whether it's FaceTime or Zoom or whatever the platform is, people seem a little bit more inclined to want to talk, and it has to start. And I hope everybody is following this best practice. You got to start with, well, how are you doing? How are you faring through all this? That has got to be the start of any business conversation. No matter what it is that's pressing, what's on the agenda, we have to start there, because people do need to talk about that. And that's an opportunity to connect. So I find even, along those lines, if you're having people reach out and maybe connect with past clients or maybe new prospects, just kind of say, have a conversation and get to know them. Don't make it the sales pitch for sure, but it's just kind of reach out, connect, see what's going on in their world, how their business is being impacted, what their clients are asking of them, and seeing to what extent we can be of assistance to them. I find that way it's not such a big bite, and that they can get started in a very positive, productive way. And one other tip I find these days, and I'd be curious to see if the group agrees, if I'm calling my clients later in the day, unlike before, but now when I call later in the day, they are more inclined to talk.
No question. I'm seeing that with my email open rates as well, Kathleen. So, when I'm sending emails, they're getting opened so much more rapidly later in the day. And I think where people used to have a traditional, like you come into the office, you get your coffee, you talk to the people, you check your email. I think people are now like having their meetings and they're still focused in the afternoon. I think the focus is different, which is awesome. I mean, we've been saying for years, as sellers, we're trusted advisor. We're your trusted advisor. And now's the time for us to put our money where our mouth is. Like, can you trust me with my emotions? If so, my business seems easy after that.
Yeah, I was just talking with a colleague here in Orange County, and he's leads the outside sales team for Kia Sarah. And he said the exact same, he said something that was so great. And he goes, what he's looking for in a salesperson is if you can't stand on your own 2 feet, how can you even help me? Right? Like if you can't get your act together, not being perfect, but just the things that we're talking about, right? Like, how are you today? What's going on? And kind of that self-identification, self-advocating, getting it together, and just being able to, know that some days we're a giraffe on ice and other days we're Simone Biles doing a 10.0 routine, right? And it's be different every single day, right? So that was exactly it, Shannon. It was one of the best, Kathleen, to your point, one of the best conversations, because I think too, right, and I'd love to hear this from everybody, is one of the best ways to get ourselves out of our own way and out of our own funk is to help somebody else and to be of service to somebody else, right?
You're a Dale Carnegie natural. That's one of our principles.
It's true. It's true. We are at our best when we're helping others. And I think the best sellers, they're doing that naturally. That's what they do. Helping people without expecting something in return usually means it is going to come in return for you.
Yeah. You know what I like about this conversation? I'm sorry, you know what I like about this conversation?
Kind of taken off, hasn't it?
We're talking soft skills. We're talking the principles that are really deep down in the heart of what selling's all about. It's about serving the client. It's about helping that other person. And I think a lot of times people forget that. Maybe in this environment, maybe they don't forget that quite as much. Maybe they're more willing to go out and help people. Maybe that'll help us with our teams to get them to do that as well.
Yeah, and you know what? I agree. And I think too, it's, I have a colleague of mine and we are on opposite sides of what's going on right now, right? And so I think you also need to have folks in your life that you can have some of those pretty intense debates with, right? Because I think the other half of the coin is you got to burn out the junk, right? And if you're somebody that has to talk out loud to think, right? Or you're a writer, or, you do video messages or whatever, like you have to have a team where you feel safe, right? Where you're like, hey man, we're not going to agree. And it might get a little intense, but it's not personal, right? So we should have people in our lives and in our corner that we don't have to be conformists to have unity, right? And so I think that's a really important thing. And, Kathleen, I don't know if you've got some coaching tips for folks on like, hey, here's how you do that.
Well, I know here's the thing. And thank you for that opportunity, because I feel strongly about this. And I'll give you an example of the point I want to make. Proofpoint is a huge cybersecurity firm based out of California, but they had bought out Wombat, right? A Pittsburgh-based company. They are amazing. And listening in on some of the announcements that they've made internally, my husband works there. One of the announcements is that, look, we're opening our offices, but if you are not comfortable to come back, by all means, stay at home. We have proven this productivity equation, right? That we can do our jobs and be good at it and be responsible. You be you, wherever that is, and we're going to trust you. So it comes down to certainly leadership, but it comes down to trust and respect. Knowing that, you know, the people you work with, they're professionals, and if they are uncomfortable coming to the office for any reason, whether it's just because of the proximity, the threat, or just because it's uncomfortable, maybe wearing a mask, know that they're still going to do their job. So as we are interfacing with our clients, what a great conversation to have, right? Where we could say, you know, what is your policy? And what are some of the issues that you're having? Which, you know, how do you feel about all of this? And helping them to think about it from their, you know, for a team leader, from their employee standpoint. I've been really gratified to work with one of my clients here in Pittsburgh who saw it ahead of the curve to want to put together programming that we help them with entitled Helping Employees Through Times of Distress. Recognizing that they have to, make them aware of, you know, all those great corporate EAP services, but also what are the conversations that need to be had in order to be there for their people. Again, back to David's point, right? These soft skills, they're so essential, and we call them soft, but they're really hard, especially when not done well.
Well,
Yeah, and
I
I
think
think
success skills.
Kathleen, one of the things that's important about the soft skills is we can find those coachable moments as sales leaders by using our data, right? So I can look in my CRM data and say, okay, here's where, you know, Kathleen has a tendency to not convert. Here's where Dione has a tendency to not convert. And
that
so
doesn't happen.
Kathleen. Not our Kathleen, but another one.
Not Dione.
But it allows you to say, okay, well, now I see, is this a system-wide problem? Is my whole team having challenges here? So maybe that's something I feed back to product management, or that's something I take back to finance, or is it something that's individual? And so we're going to get those sort of indicators from our data to say, where do I find these coachable moments? And now that we're at home, you know, being coachable and keeping that feedback loop between the leader and the sales team, mega important, but also super important to make sure that we're talking to our friends in other departments too, being intentional about that, to say, here are the signals that we're seeing, you know, these are some things we have to consider, whether they're, you know, soft skills, or as Dione calls them, success skills, which I love. You know, is it quantitative or qualitative? And it's never one or the other. They always go together, right? So, you know, for the sales leaders on the call, how do you get those signals to say, here's where we need to make some changes? Because although Dion's right, what we're doing is for now, what we do after is not going to be returning. When people are saying, like, I want to go back to normal, it's never going to go back to the same. It's going to be something different yet. So, you know, this is what we're doing for now. Who knows what's coming here, but what we have to do is open that really encouraging feedback loop conversation.
So I'm curious here. I know that a lot of us are going to be, our teams are going to be dispersed, although our sales teams, for instance, might have been inside sales to begin with, and now they're being dispersed into other places, perhaps their homes or elsewhere. How does that get affected? What types of issues are we going to have? Soft skills or technical types of issues that we may encounter here with those types of scenarios where suddenly you've got 20 people or 100 people who are being pushed out to some other location instead of a local office.
Yeah, I agree. And so this is where your leadership acumen comes in very, very, plays a big role, right? And so if you have a young team, this process for kind of pivoting them, right, and having them adapt needs to be pretty well articulated, right? So they don't have the experience always to know what it is, right? And so if you have a team that has a little bit more experience, again, you have the opportunity, you can use shorthand, right? So if Shannon and I are going to go into and work with a client together, we've known each other long enough that we can go, okay, here's what a sales forecast is, here's our stages, here's what it is, right? And that conversation can go super fast. If it's somebody who's a little bit newer, who doesn't understand the nuances behind the process, that conversation is going to take longer. So David, all of that is happening across the board as far as, hey, I've got these amazing inside sales teams, right? Or even my outside to inside. How do I prescribe them this new process? Number one. And number two, how detailed does my process need to be? Right? So when we're a leader, you need to definitely, in your head, think about it from a couple different buckets, right? Is one, process creation. And so what does that need to look like? What do people need? What do they need from me? A lot of detail, not a lot of detail. Do we have the data, right? You're building the house, make sure you've got some pretty strong toolkits. And then to what, Shannon and Kathleen are talking about, and you, David, right, is how do I roll this out to folks, right, without boiling the frog out of the pot, right? So I think we've all heard that analogy, but you want to make sure that our communication loops are resonating with our end users' ears at the end of the day, right? And so those are definitely some pieces you're going to want to take into consideration.
Those
May
are
I
great
tag
also
team on that?
Go ahead, Kathleen, sorry.
So great point, right? We have to make sure that communication is fluid and effective. How about for inside, right? For our teams respectively. Now, Dale Carnegie is set up as a worldwide franchise. So for our local team, we operate Central PA, Western PA, and Northeast Ohio. This pandemic situation has given us an opportunity to reorganize and collaborate in ways that we hadn't done before, just because of market necessity. But now, with everything that we've been able to shift to 100% virtual, I would say, in terms of our offerings and our services, we've been able to collaborate more because now geography is not a thing, right? Whatever we collectively as a team can offer and promote, we can do so across territory lines right now. So it has afforded us a great opportunity to get to know one another in different ways because we've each kind of shifted roles and responsibilities. We've had a much heavier emphasis on social media. We've had a lot heavier emphasis on promotion and marketing efforts. And it's been very rewarding in that regard. So my point is, communication needs to and can be heightened during this time for a very positive outcome internally within your team. We have always had Monday morning cadence calls. We call them cadence, but calls. And, that's, for us to respectively have our team activities coordinated. Well, now we've added Wednesday mornings. We call them the 3E meetings. We do educate, entertain, and engage. And that's just locally where, those three market areas where we revisit and help each other. And we always start with good news. So it's been invigorating, it's been enlightening, and it has given us, most of us, an opportunity to get additional experience in various capacities that otherwise we would be operating more autonomously. Yeah. So I like the theme of positivity that I've heard echoed with Dione and Shannon, and I concur. This is an opportunity and one that we should embrace.
Absolutely. Yeah. We have a few minutes left here, but before we leave, I want to make sure that we handle a couple of tactical issues, because I think a lot of the questions that people have to do with how do I do X or how do I do Y? So if I can ask a couple of those types of questions, such as, so if I'm going to be setting up my people in the field, what's the best way for me to do it? Should I be letting them use their own cell phones, or should we be doing some sort of voice over IP? How does that work? And how do they get involved with the technology at that point if we haven't before been cloud-based, especially?
Yes, and yes. I think what we have the opportunity to do now is personalize our offerings, by considering, who's comfortable with technology. And Dione mentioned before, somebody who said, hey, I've been doing it this way for 40 years. I'm not going to change now. Well, guess what? If that's your A player and that's the person who's retiring the most quota, it's worth your effort to say, you know what? I'm not going to force you now to figure out how to make all this technology work. I'm going to give you what you need so you can ride the rails into your retirement. And while you're doing it, make a big impact on my quota, right? So I think, it's a great time for us to say, what kind of extra effort can I put into my technology? And then also in the communication and training so that you can make it so that it's not onerous for the people who are using it. To say, how can we make sure that this is user friendly? Because people are giving us more time now. Your sellers, if they're not commuting, they're not traveling, instead of them spending 40 minutes battling, rush hour traffic, they're probably working. So they're giving you more time now. You've got more time. They have more time to call their prospects. They have more time to, enter their CRM data. So, I think it's a good opportunity to say, how do we make things even better and even easier for you?
Amen. Yep.
So taking that same topic a little bit farther, then we've got clients who are doing the same thing. We've got prospects who are out there at their homes. Perhaps your databases tell you how to be able to get in touch with them in the office, but they're not in the office. Any techniques or tips that you have in order to be able to better reach them while they're on their own with their cell phones?
I love LinkedIn messaging. I find that LinkedIn messaging will get a response faster than email 9 out of 10 attempts. Not long, not lengthy. You're not selling, you're connecting.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's amazing, Kathleen. And I think too, one of these things, and we have some folks that might go change this now, but sometimes when people set up their LinkedIn contact information, they put their cell phone in there, right? So as a seller, you need to kind of be resourceful. You should have always been resourceful, but right, is look everywhere. So if you've got a Zoom Info or Discover Org license, or a Zoom license or Discover Org, or, go into LinkedIn and look at their contact info. Chances are that might be their cell phone. Some folks have their out of office on with their cell phone number, right? And their contact information too in LinkedIn might be their personal. So one of the things that a colleague of mine does is she sends birthday cards. Send an electronic birthday card. Send an electronic thinking of you without being weird, right? This is a professional setting, but come on, right? But who doesn't like getting something that, doesn't have any strings attached, right? So there's so much you can do, right? If you're doing a video or an onboarding program, host a watch party, right? If you're outside sales and you're bringing your team's coffee, donuts, pizza, whatever, then host a watch party and have the pizza and food and beverages delivered, right? Do it together. There's so many ways that, we can keep people employed and still connect with people in a meaningful way, exactly like Kathleen is saying.
I love it, Dione. And I was going to say, if you've got some early adopters, innovators on your sales team, video is such a cool way to approach people. You can send a video that's like, hey, Dione, I've been trying to reach you. I've got some interesting information. I've learned something new about your industry I want to share. And on LinkedIn, in LinkedIn messaging, which I also love as much as the other ladies do, you can actually send voice messages. So you can record a voice message and send it just like a voicemail through traditional LinkedIn messaging, which is spectacular. So it's a really nice way to get somebody sort of familiar with you so they don't think you're just sending one of those LinkedIn, drop ship messages that everybody's getting.
Wait, so you can do video messages and sales LinkedIn messages?
You can send voice messages directly through LinkedIn native. If you want to do video, there's loads of providers out there. I like OneMob, but there's plenty of them that work.
Got it.
I love it when we learn from each other. That's a great thing. So let's then take it one step further, and that is that a lot of our clients' organizations will be smaller than they were previously. That may mean having more difficulty getting in touch with them for various reasons that cause the stress that we were talking about earlier. Any tips about how to deal with those types of scenarios?
Well, maybe just banking on the LinkedIn thing. If you see them active on social media, just like and comment what they're writing and thinking about, and start forming a relationship, some kind of at least a common area of interest that way, and you might get a better response with that little bit of effort.
Mhm.
And people are being pretty open now. You know, when people are being downsized, I think now is a time where people are like, hey, I want to be authentic. Airbnb did something that I thought was spectacular. When they had to let go a large amount of their workforce, they actually built a database of the people they had to furlough. So if you were hiring, you could go find one of their people. So I think people are being more openly authentic. And I think it's okay if you've built a relationship, like Kathleen said, to say, hey, Kathleen, I've really been trying to crack into your organization. One, is there anything I can do for you if you're on the job hunt or you're looking for consulting jobs? Two, do you know the right person I should be connecting with? Because I think, you know, we can really be helpful to the company that you just left.
You know, on that point, I've been noticing that LinkedIn on our home pages have been putting who's hiring type of link almost every day that I've seen for the last couple of weeks. And I think that's a great thing for them to do, good service. And I suspect it helps them from a business standpoint. So that's also good for them. But, you know, that sort of shows one of the key pieces is just because it's good for you doesn't mean it's good for them. But if it's good for both of you, then it's lovely to work in a win-win type of scenario. So look, it's about 2 minutes before the hour. I'm afraid we are going to have to cut it off here in a moment or two. I have an offer and an idea that I'd like to share. But if anyone has got a 15-second tip you want to share before I get into that, please, this is probably a good time to do that.
I have a little bit of a new idea that just kind of came to me in working with some clients lately. You know how everyone is just doing back to back to back to back with Zoom meetings and virtual meetings. And if you're running up to 2 o'clock and their next meeting starts at 2, they're going to miss the start. So my encouragement going forward, especially with one-on-one meetings that you're meeting with people virtually, try to end 5 minutes early. It'd be really respectful.
Now you tell me.
Yeah, well, that's for you next time, David.
Next time, okay. That's a great tip, and I'm going to use it next time. Dione and Shannon, what do you got for us? Anything?
I agree with Kathleen. 45-minute meetings are the king at this point. Ending and starting and stopping on time is queen. So yeah, Shannon.
I am just a fan of going back, and everyone knows me. I love technology, right? I'm obsessed, but I have taken it back to the old school, and I've been writing notes to people, literally putting them in the mail and saying, you know, it was so fun to talk to you today. And, you know, I think
Yeah.
What will be interesting is saying like truly hybrid, you know, old school and new school. How can we combine?
Absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you, all three of you, Shannon, Dione, and Kathleen. You know, I just thought of something. I'm going to give you an offer in a minute or two. Our contact information has been up here for this entire panel. So hopefully you've had a chance to get it down. We'll also be sending it in the follow-up email that's coming directly out of Zoom. It's automated. It doesn't come from me. But a couple things that occurred to me is I've got an offer for you just because you're here. I'm actually going to edit that offer out of the YouTube video. So you guys are lucky. But in addition, Kathleen, we have a Dale Carnegie white paper about dealing with artificial intelligence and how things change. You know, that might be a good one for us to share here too. So I will make an offer to share that one as well, because it's all about the same type of thing. How do you deal with a changing environment based on technology? And that one's got a lot of good tips. It's a Dale Carnegie paper.
You know, the one I like too, David, is building resiliency within your organization.
Okay. Anybody want one of those two, let me know, and either I'll handle it or send it to Kathleen, or we'll figure it out, but we'll get you a copy of it. Thank you all for being here. We've got Shannon Gregg from Cloud Adoption Solutions. We've got Kathleen Himler from Dale Carnegie Training, and we've got Dione Mischler from Inside Sales by Design. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody, including our panel of authorities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.